Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And yes, I am back in my closet. And I don't know. I like it in here. And maybe it's weird. Maybe I'll be, have you seen the chick with the podcast in the closet? Maybe I'll be like, it'll be what I become famous for. We'll see. Anyway, I'm in here for a couple reasons. One, because I just like it in here, which may be weird. But it's just the sound is good. I feel like I'm isolated from the rest of the house. And that's the other thing, is that my husband went to Richmond for a concert last night. And so he went to bed early tonight. And I'm just trying to not disturb him so he can get some sleep because he has to work tomorrow. So lots of reasons I'm here. And let's get started. So I did an act of kindness today, but I didn't do it. I felt like it was a gift to me rather than a gift to this lady. But this evening I was walking my dogs before I put them to bed. And yes, like infants. And this older man that I had talked to this past weekend. So they are on my walk around the block. So it's a guy that I just met this weekend. He was putting his hose away and he was like, "Is that a Weimaraner?" And I said, "Yeah." So he came over and started talking to me. And I said, "I just love to walk by his house because his garden is so pretty." And he said, "Oh, that's my wife." So I said, "Well, please share with her how much I love her garden." So today I was walking by and they were pulling in and into their driveway. And before they pulled in, she got out of the car and she came up to me and she said, "I was told I need to get out of the car and meet you and Daisy." I'm like, "No, it's Autumn, not Daisy." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then so we talked and she was asking me questions about Autumn. And I wasn't quite able to follow, like, I wasn't quite sure why she was asking me things. Like, I didn't know if she knew about Weimaraners and she was asking, like, how is she as a Weimaraner or what. But I just started answering questions and I ended up telling her my entire life story, okay, while I was standing there. And I'm like, I'm sure you did not get out of the car to hear my life story, but clearly I needed to talk to somebody today. And so I said, "I actually just think your garden is so beautiful and I really appreciate when I get to walk by your house every day to walk my dog." And she said that her husband had told her that I loved it. And um, anyway, I ended up telling her about my stroke. And yes, I went there. Like I was telling her about, no, I didn't tell her I'm an alcoholic, but I told her about, that I had originally got the Weimaraner because she was so active and I was so active. And now the best I can do is walk around the block. And so then we started talking about just vestibular disorder, what I've been facing. And yeah, and then we got to the point where she was like, "You should start writing." And I said, "As a matter of fact, I am. I'm writing a memoir." And so she was like, you never know who might be dealing with the same thing," or something like that. And when I got home, like I went up here to put the dogs away in their beds, in their dens. I call them their dens. And I was thinking, I wonder if they are going through something similar or something. I don't know. Because that's what happens when I'm in sobriety. I just, the planets just kind of align for me, and I run into people that really somehow are connected with me or something that I'm going through. So I complimented her on her garden again. That's my act of kindness. But like I said, I don't know if what I gave to her was as meaningful as what she gave to me today. And that was just listening to me talk, honestly. They were very nice people. So that was my act of kindness today. So let's move on to the topic at hand. And that is what it is like in our families when we're in recovery. And I was thinking when I first started planning out my thoughts for the topic today, I was thinking about this along the lines of sobriety. And that's because I recently interacted with a woman who's having a really hard time in the beginning of sobriety, where her husband is, it sounds like, I don't know if he's not supportive of the efforts that she needs to put into maintaining sobriety, or he's jealous of the new relationships she's building in sobriety, or he doesn't think she really has a problem. I don't think that's the case. I think it's the first two. I think that when other people who are less informed think about those of us that have an addiction, they think that you just stop. You just don't pick it up. And that's just not the way that it works. That's what it looks like on the outside. It looks like you just don't drink. But there is an entire and thorough change that has to happen within us in order for us to not pick up a drink. And then coincidentally, I was listening to the last chapter of identity theft today. And because it brought tears to my eyes. So I was listening to it. And this is the book that we had last month, that Deborah Meyerson wrote. And she was just talking about this again, the change in identity, the change in role. The book talks a lot about your family and how it changes and how her family changed. And I think what really impacted me a lot today was when I heard the part about her kids helping her write her book. They were editing and that, and how much her husband has done for her over the years, and thinking back to all the chapters where she's talking about, how angry she had gotten at one point in the hospital at one of the nurses, and all she had to do was look at her husband, and he was ready to fight the fight for her and do whatever needed to happen in order for her to get a nurse that was appropriate for what she needed, and somebody that talked to her in a way that was like she's an adult and not a child. Anyway, it was interesting because all of this aligns with this balancing act in recovery, whether it is sobriety or stroke recovery. And I thought, once again, as always, this is perfect. This aligns again. It's just inspiring how much I learned in sobriety and continue to learn from others that I run across in sobriety that remind me of what I'm going through now in stroke recovery and how similar it is, how It's not the same kind of story, but it is so similar. It's so similar. So I wanted to talk about that delicate balance between our recovery efforts, and you apply recovery to whatever applies to you, whether you listen to the podcast because you've also had a stroke, or you suffer from chronic pain, or you have a vestibular disorder, or you are sober. Think about your recovery efforts and your family life. And there's a chapter in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous called The Family Afterward. And the chapter talks about understanding how recovery can reshape our family dynamics, of how we as a unit, the family, can foster understanding of one another at home. And one of my values is communication, and that is where it's at. It's at communication. And I am not going to sit here and pretend that my relationship with my husband, my family, my extended family is perfect at communication. It may be one of my values, but that doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. So, when I first got sober, before it stuck, I tried for several years, and the first time I went to detox and I got out of detox, I still had drinking around me. Family and friends were still drinking around me. And the second time I got out of detox, friends and family did not drink around me. I don't believe that this was the difference between me getting sober, staying sober, and not staying sober. I don't think it was. I think the difference was, I've talked about it before, that I was willing to do whatever it took the second time. I took all suggestions the second time around. The first time around, I picked and chose what suggestions I wanted to take and which ones I was like, that's not important enough. Whether it's going to a addiction therapist, going to meetings, calling my sponsor. I didn't do any of that stuff the first time, so I drank again. I can easily say if I'm not healthy up here, I can blame it on drinking by family and friends around me. But that's just not what it was. That's not the case. The second time I got sober, I think there was a real understanding with my husband and my kids that this is a life or death situation. I think that they got that the second time. I think that they believed it the first time, but thought that I was the one that was recovering. I was the one that had to change. And without asking, my husband and my kids never brought alcohol into the house again. Never. So they, they had this change within them that I didn't have to say anything. I was fighting for my life. I didn't have to say anything to them. They made their own decisions. So now I want to switch gears and say, this is what happened when I had my stroke. When I had my stroke, my family rallied, did whatever it took to get me to my doctor's appointments, to get me to whatever therapy, So it's different, and I'm trying to be careful about how I communicate this. It's different for people that are observing the person in recovery. If you're recovering from alcoholism, it looks different to the people around us than if you're recovering from a stroke. Both are potentially fatal illnesses, potentially fatal health conditions. But there's one that is so understood, our brains aren't even understood, but the fact that you have a stroke, that it's a blood clot, or you can have a, not the clot, but the brain bleed kind of stroke. It's understood that that's a medical condition that can be fatal. Alcoholism is just not as understood, that it's a disease. It's a battle for people to see it as a disease and an illness instead of a lack of will. And so I think that any family member who may struggle with supporting an alcoholic in recovery would act completely different if that same person in recovery was recovering from a stroke. I just think that that is the way that it is. And, hopefully that will change in time as more people like me and Deborah Meyerson and, Bill Wilson and his wife and all of these people that are recovering from all of these different conditions speak out about what it's like to be the person in recovery. And it's only through that education by the patient themselves, the survivor themselves, that we can really help others to understand what we need as somebody in recovery. So, in both cases, just to summarize, my family has been absolutely incredible. I have received, my family is something that I could have only dreamed of before I became somebody in dual recovery. I wish that I could have seen that. I wish I could have built this kind of communication without having had to be an alcoholic or having had to have a stroke or have a vestibular disorder or have a chronic migraine. I wish it was like that. It's just not. So what I'm dealing with right now is a lot of health stuff, and my family has been my muscles, has been my voice sometimes, has been my net, my life support. Like, they've been everything to me. But I know that not all people just get thrown right into having the exact support that they need, because I didn't get the exact support that I needed in the beginning either. We learned together as a family. I don't even know that I knew what I needed. I didn't know what I needed. And today I still don't exactly know what I need. I haven't been in the whole scheme of things, I haven't been doing any of this recovery stuff for very long. It seems like a long time. I'm hopefully going to be celebrating 8 years of sobriety at the end of this month. And I will, April, May, June, in 2 months, I will be celebrating my 3-year anniversary since my stroke. I'm not quite sure if we're going to celebrate that or not. Deborah Meyerson in her book says that she celebrates it because it was an opportunity, like she was given a second chance at life. And I don't know. I mean, I like that. I can get on board with that. I'm not quite sure that that's how I want to do it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens on June 6th this year. We'll see. So, okay. So when somebody embarks on a path of recovery, it's not a journey that we do by ourselves as one person, right? Our families travel alongside us. And they are not the patients, so they are traveling really on a parallel track beside us. And as as an alcoholic, I invest my time in AA meetings, I invest my time in fellowship. And when I first got sober, I was afraid. I was very cognizant of this. And I don't know if it's because this chapter of the family afterward in the big book was one that we read in one of my early meetings, but I was really aware that I was afraid my boyfriend, my husband at the time, was going to feel jealous, pushed aside, or neglected. And I was also afraid my kids were going to feel that way too. And it is a shift. It is a giganto shift from what our family is used to. It's a shift like, well, I used to never leave the house because I didn't want to not have a drink with me, right? So for me to be constantly gone, not constantly gone, but I wouldn't come home straight after work. I would go to an AA meeting right after work. And on the weekends, I would leave to go have lunch with my sponsor or something like that. Or I'd go over to my sponsor's house for coffee and to go over one of the steps. So I was starting to leave the house. I was starting to have relationships with people that he didn't know, that my kids didn't know. And I was beginning to come home and tell stories, and laugh about, oh, yeah, I was talking to Lisa the other day, and she said this or that, and yeah, she's been sober for 3 years or something. And so he's hearing me talk about people he doesn't know, he's never seen, he's never heard of. And that shift in the way that I'm spending my time requires an open dialogue between you as the recovery, I don't know, and your family, to explain what they don't know is what you've been educated on every time you go to a meeting, which is you need to take all suggestions, you need to call your sponsor, you need to pray, you need to read the big book, you need to have be a part of something bigger than yourself and meet people outside of meeting. Like, you're getting all this information about what you need in order to maintain your sobriety, but your family's not getting that information unless you tell them. So they don't know that you are going to need to do all these things, that you are going to have to put your sobriety first. They still think that they're first, because when I was drinking, in my mind, my family was first. That's the truth. Is when I was drinking, my alcohol was first. That is That is the disgusting truth. Of course, I was there for my family. Of course, I was a great mom. But in my sick head, I made sure that I had my drink before I went and ran the bath for my kids, or something like that. So, what the big book tells us in Alcoholics Anonymous is about being open. And as the recovering individuals, we're urged to share about the whys of our commitment to the program. They don't know. They aren't mind readers. Without us telling them, I'm required, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to 4 meetings a week. I'm going to meet my sponsor on Saturdays. I'm going to make sure that whenever they have a picnic during the summertime, I'm going to go. That kind of thing. I need to call somebody in the program once a day. That kind of stuff. I need to tell them, or else they are going to start being confused as to, are they losing me as a friend, as a family member? What is happening? Where am I going? And it's my job to articulate the role that my fellowship of sobriety plays in my life and in me being able to not pick up a drink. So we can invite our family members to partake in our journey. They don't have to be bystanders and stay at home and wait for us. They can be partners. They may not want to, but they are invited to show up to AA meetings. They are invited to go to these outings with us. What I have found in my situation is that my family does not want to do that. And that is totally fine. The only time I've had family show up to anything in that it's affiliated with my sobriety program is my mom and my sister went to a meeting with me once, and my sister had a party for me for my 1-year anniversary. And I think 2 people came. 2 people and my mom. So and that's fine. Like my daughter came to one of my sobriety meetings. Like I had to pick her up from soccer or something, and she had to come, and she sat in the car. Really, she didn't want to come in. And I was sad. Of course, I was sad. I wanted her to be a part. I wanted her to meet all of my new friends. It's just like if I had a new job, I would want her to meet all my new friends at my job. And I feel the same way about my husband. I want him to meet all of my friends. And my son, my son's not the most extroverted person. So I don't know that he would ever want to meet any of my friends, whether it's at work or sobriety or whatever. He'll do it if I ask him to, but other than that, he likes to be pretty much to himself. But anyway, I have been having a lot of folks come visit me since I've been a bit isolated, which I'm trying to start working on. So my husband has been meeting a lot more people in my program, which has been really nice. But so just be aware, like invite them to come, invite them to be a part of your journey as much as they want to be a part of your journey. But understand that as difficult as it is for you to be a part of your own journey, imagine how hard it is for them to dive right in. And, I mean, unfortunately, some of our family members may also have the same the same sort of addiction or alcoholism issues, and they don't want to look at themselves. That's not the case that I know of in my family, but that is the case in some folks that I've talked to over the years in sobriety. So patience and empathy is a two-way street when we're dealing with our family members in recovery. And adapting to our new roles and routines is going to require time. I'm still working on it in my stroke recovery. I'm still not quite sure what my routine is. I think that I'm still in such heavy therapy and stuff like that I don't know that I've reached a real, I don't know, groove, because I'm still dealing with when my head hurts, I gotta lay down. When I need to do my exercises once a day, maybe twice a day, depending on how I'm feeling and that kind of thing. So we can't rush the understanding of our family members, nor can we force them to change with us in any recovery situation. We are kind of walking a tightrope of sorts, balancing our new commitments, whether it's sobriety meetings because you're getting sober, or therapy and doctor's appointments if you are in stroke recovery or have chronic pain issues. And so balancing these commitments with the needs of our loved ones. I used to be the person who had to take care of everything. Whether I was taking care of everything or not is still in question. I have a feeling my husband was taking care of a lot of things that I wouldn't give him credit for because that's just me. But I'm able to now step back a little more and be like, okay, I will be more acceptable to help now, to being able to say, I can't make dinner tonight, and it's not like anybody even asked me to make dinner, but that's the role that I'm used to. So, getting into this new mindset where it's okay to just be like, I can't do it today, it requires empathy from my family members, and it requires empathy from me to see, their side when they're used to me being a certain way and now I'm not. Again, in sobriety, there was a lot of change. It was like in sobriety, it was like we were starting a whole new relationship again. It was like we had to get to know each other again. We were totally different people when neither of us were drinking. I mean, I was the one with the problem, but we were both, trying to figure out, is this we gonna work? The other we was working, but is this sober we gonna work? And it's really during this time where you're getting to know one another again in these new roles and routines, it's not the time to be right. It's not the time to not say I'm sorry for things. It's not the time to try to just be right. I don't know. I can't think of it another way, but get comfortable saying I'm wrong, even if you're not wrong, get comfortable with letting things go, because recovery, I think, is a lot of a lot of just, let's just let stuff happen without us having to do anything. Let time go by. Time does a lot, Okay, so I feel like I've said it, a bunch of times. I'll try to stop that, sorry. And now I'm going to be hyper aware of it. So the next layer is understanding control and responsibility. We can't control people, places, and things. Our sphere of influence is limited to our own actions and attitudes. And some of us with cognitive impairments from stroke, some of us from emotion that need emotional healing, whether it's from stroke or alcoholism. There's a whole 2 years that I was emotionally recovering. I did it again. There's a whole 2 years of emotional recovery where I was actively going to see an addiction therapist. I'm still working the steps every day of my life, and that is, I think, going to be a chronic illness. I'm dealing chronically with chronic depression and anxiety. What is interesting is I'm just scratching the surface of this idea that I've been introduced to, that anxiety and a vestibular disorder are linked in some way. And I'm going to do a little bit of research on that because I'm not fully understanding. What I have understood is the sensation going on in my head seems to get worse when I have a little bit of a anxiety increase. When my stress increases, my head starts hurting more. So I thought that was interesting. That's totally unrelated. Well, maybe not, but we have to, when we're dealing with these impairments, emotional healing, it's pivotal when we're talking with our family members to understand that they are also shifting. As we're trying to get better, oh my gosh, that's so annoying. We bear the responsibility of maintaining our sobriety, keeping up with therapy, resting enough, advocating for ourselves. But we also have to honor our family obligations. Striving for equilibrium becomes a daily practice. But if we become aware of it, that's the first battle, is becoming aware. And then once I'm aware that this might be happening, this person in my family might be feeling this way, I am more willing to take action, to communicate. So the change and willingness aren't exclusive to the person in recovery. It extends to the entire family unit. It's not about who changes first, who changes the most, but rather about everyone's willingness to evolve as a unit. When I began my recovery journey with my husband, he didn't immediately transform. It took him time to recognize my disease as what it is, as a disease, I think. I don't know, I wasn't in his head, but what I observed was this time that elapsed that allowed him to recognize how to move forward. And if he wanted to move forward with me, he had to step with me in unison. I have to admit that I have this partner who has gone above and beyond to change his lifestyle for me. I realize that not all people have that kind of gesture extended to them. I didn't ask for it. He just did it. I suppose it's because the first time I got out of detox, I was not able to stay sober, and there was drinking around me. I don't want to say I wasn't able to stay sober because there was drinking around me, because like I started off the episode with, I don't think that that's why. I don't think that was the result of there being drinking around me. Navigating the hurt and jealousy is a real thing, and it needs to be brought out in the open. The jealousy thing, jealousy is like an ugly word, It's like the J word. It's uncomfortable to say the word jealousy, especially with our partners. And they may feel jealous and not want to say the word because it's difficult to say that word. They may feel jealous seeing us finding joy and solace in the company of strangers in recovery meetings, whether we're in sobriety or stroke recovery or vestibular therapy. Whenever one person in a relationship goes into some sort of recovery meetings and the other person in the relationship is not a part of that, there is a chance for jealousy. They may wonder why they can't, in the case of sobriety, why couldn't I get you sober? Why is it that you have to go be with these strangers to stay sober? I mean, why wasn't I enough? Or in the case of stroke recovery, why do you have to go hang out with those people and talk about your feelings? Why don't you just talk to me about it? Why do you need them? And why am I not enough? These feelings are natural and they're completely valid. Recognizing this, we have to ensure that our loved ones know that they're integral to our happiness and recovery. We have to communicate to them the amount of time that we need to commit to meetings and building a network around us. But also, we as the recovering people need to be empathetic to those people who remain in the same social network, and that's our spouses. That's the caregivers. I imagine it feels a little bit like you're being left behind. I imagine that it is. It's the only way I know how to eliminate that is to talk about it. That's the only way. So as I close today's episode, just remember that our families are not just spectators in our recovery. They are active participants, and they may need help from us to understand how they can help us. Help me, help you. I think Tom Cruise said that. Somebody said that to Tom Cruise. I don't know. No, it was Tom Cruise. Okay. My relationship has become something I never would have imagined it being. Especially now that I'm in recovery from vestibular rehabilitation, stroke recovery, not being able to watch TV, things like that. My husband and I sit in a room and talk for about 3 hours every night. On a bad day, it's 2 hours. But this is a communication opportunity that I just never imagined. It's cool. It's just cool to have that kind of relationship. And I don't think that would have happened ever in our relationship if I didn't stop drinking. And now this stroke and vestibular stuff, we just continue to get closer and closer. That's my perspective on it. So try to let the love in your family guide you into mutual understanding and support, but you've got to talk. And it's not easy, and that's where all these other episodes come in handy. There are a couple of you that I'm aware of who listen to this podcast with your spouse, and I have to call you out and say that you, my friends, have the greatest gift of all. The fact that you are one unit in recovery. Be grateful for each other today. I'm sure you already are. You don't need me to tell you that. But you are what helped the rest of us see that it's possible for an entire family or a couple to recover together. So thank you for showing up for us. And thanks for joining me today on the Recovery Daily podcast. I will talk to you tomorrow and hopefully not say, anymore. See ya.